Yeah, I have some allergies in a combination. Last Sunday, my voice was bad, so I apologize for that. And this is not a warm wine; it is tea, herbal tea, that my son insisted I drink it. So I brought a thermos with me. Yeah. Let's begin, and we're going to recite Al-Fatiha. Please join me. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Malik yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata al-lazina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Ameen. So today's topic is interesting, and I'm sure it will also intrigue you certain part of this lecture, and that is a forgotten Muslim scholar life and works of Abdullah Yusuf Ali. So the question always is asked, who was Abdullah Yusuf Ali? It's amazing that in 1990 or 91, I met the head of the Jamaat-e-Islami in Pakistan, Amjad Hussain, who was junior to me in college. And he was Amir of Jamaat-e-Islami of Pakistan. A scholar, really. Done a lot of good work. So I asked him, I said, I need some information about this Abdullah Yusuf Ali. And to my utter surprise, he did not know much about this fantastic man. I'm sure there were people who knew about Abdullah Yusuf Ali, but in 1992, 91, I tried to gather some information because it always intrigued me that an Indian man, a Muslim Indian man, who was faithful servant of the British, goes on to write a fantastic translation with commentaries of the Quran, which at that time, at the literary level, was considered as a very high literature. And not many people knew about that. And unfortunately, the clock will come all the way around. And as in those days, at least I could not find out who he was. When he died, a lot of people did not know that he had died. So it was not until 94 that first book came out, the biography on the left. It says, Searching for Solace. This was a Malaysian scholar by the name of M.A. Sharif, who wrote a beautiful biography of him. And then in 2010, a scholar from Pakistan, K.K. Aziz, wrote about him. Both books are available on Amazon. And I'm sure those of you who are interested can further their knowledge by reading these books. So I have divided my talk into various subtitles: early life education, his stay in London, in India as a senior civil servant, living between two worlds, his personal life, in the service of Nizam of Hyderabad. Hyderabad was a princely state ruled by a Muslim, but a majority were Hindus. And this Muslim leader, Mir Usman Ali, was a very enlightened man, and I'll come to that in a moment later on. Then he was at Islamic College Lahore, and the beginning of his monumental work. What happened to him during the World War II, and then a fading star who died on the streets of London. So, He was born in 1878 in Surat, a town in India, a coastal town in India, to a Muslim Bora Shia family. Shias are subdivided into different clans, if you will, and Bora is one clan. They are pretty orthodox clan, and we have them in Bombay, but we also had a lot of Boras in Karachi, substantial number of Boras. He finished Quran when he was 5 years old, and he was taught Arabic. Anjuman-e-Islam School in Mumbai was where he was admitted, and by sheer coincidence, the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, was his classmate, because Jinnah also had roots in Bombay, whereas Bombay and Karachi. And their paths will cross again, Jinnah and Abdullah Yusuf Ali many, many years later in London. He got his bachelor's from Bombay University. And then he won a scholarship to go to Cambridge. And while he was in Cambridge studying law, and he read English and philosophy, he sat in the ICS examination. ICS examination is Indian Civil Service examination. That was the exams where the elite students would sit, pass, and then they were guaranteed a high government job. Now imagine this is in the background of India, where the Indians, that is now 1878, 18, close to 1900s, Indians were not holding any important jobs at that time. But they did open this service examination, civil service exam, for Indian boys. Unfortunately, for the longest time, there were only boys who sat in this exam. So when he was in London, he sat in the exam and he was seventh in the merit. So from there, he went to India, where he was appointed as magistrate and revenue officer in the United Provinces of India. And he also was promoted later to district and sessions judge. At every step, I want you to know that he is breaking the barriers of color barrier about the native and the English men, or the Brit barrier that he was being promoted. And he also served as the under and deputy secretary in British Indian government. He returned to England in 1896. Now there is a tradition which many of you know, that when you pass the exams, which you did from Cambridge, but you have to be called, what they call called to the bar. And there are few, Lincoln Inn is one of them, where you're called to a bar. That means that you have reached the highest pinnacle of the law education. And there were three people from the Indian subcontinent who were called to the bar at Lincoln's Inn. One was Muhammad Ali Jinnah, his primary school classmate. One was Muhammad Iqbal, later known as Poet of the East, Allama Dr. Muhammad Iqbal, and Abdullah Yusuf Ali. So here is the their paths crossed in one way or the other, but they were in many ways the opposite poles of the thinking as to what should be the fate of India. And that is an intriguing point. I will come to that. He traveled extensively to promote Great Britain. He was an Anglophile par excellence. He did not believe in political Islam. He thought the government of Great Britain and the Indian British government was best for the Indian population. So he did not want to mix religion with politics. However, I will share his views on Palestine, how he became disenchanted with his loyalty to the British. And he was also decorated. This is the commander of the British Empire, CBE. This is one notch below the knighthood that the British conferred on him. He went through two marriages. The first was in 1900 to Teresa Mary Shelders. He got married in England in a Church of England ceremony. He went, then both the couple went to India. His wife, being an English woman, thought that India is ruled by the British, right? And she would have a good reception. No, if she marries a native Indian, she is not going to be included and accepted by the British society. So that was a big disappointment. Whereas he also thought that because of his marriage, he will be in the inner circle of the British. No. So they were really left out, neither Indian nor British. And that perhaps was also a problem in their marriage. So they had 3 sons and 1 daughter, and in 1912 they divorced. Divorce happened in London. They went back, he filed for divorce, and he was given the custody of the children. And I think there was a question of infidelity. And so he was given, and now, on the one hand, the man is a scholar who left fantastic legacy. On the other hand, his relations with the family are so bizarre that you don't know what really makes them do that. So he buys a house in London, he hires a governess, and he gives his children under the care of the governess, and then he sails back to India. I mean, this is absolutely unbelievable. In 1920, when he was living in London, he married second time to Gertrude Ann Mabi, who converted to Islam, and her given name was Masuma, innocent. And 1 son was born, and later on, he became estranged from his that wife also. And by this time, he had decided he was disenchanted, and he decided to resign from his Indian civil service, which is unheard of. I mean, getting to a job in civil service is the most difficult thing. And once you have it, you have those promotions. You are among the handful of elite Indians that you can govern. And he was so disenchanted with his life that he resigned. And then he practiced law in Lucknow and one other place. And then he became a revenue minister in the princely state of Hyderabad under Nizam Mir Usman Ali Khan. No, this Nizam means really the head of the state in context to Hyderabad. He was an enlightened man, I mentioned, and he did a lot of patronage, not only to Muslims but Hindus. If there were scholars anywhere in India, they took refuge in Hyderabad and he gave them good jobs. He also had this plan that not only the Muslims and Hindus learn science, but should learn that science in their native language, Urdu. So he had this enormous translation bureau where each and every textbook in any subject of medicine was translated in Urdu. And he, Abdullah Yusuf Ali, he supervised part of that work. Incidentally, two of you who are from Peshawar, if you go to Peshawar University Library, they have a complete set of those scientific books, which was printed in Urdu. It was a short-lived experiment. It did not materialize so that it would be copied by other states in the country. But it was a bold experiment he did, and uh, Yusuf Ali played an important part. Here is his philosophy summed up. I believe in the progressive interpretation of Quran, in the need for understanding and explaining spiritual matters from different angles. This is what led him. And don't forget, he was in great turmoil, personal turmoil. So everything has come together in his life, and he had this statement. It was a monumental work. He started in 1934. He was invited by Allama Iqbal, Sir Muhammad Iqbal, the poet of the East, who also was called to the bar at the Lincoln Inn with him. He invited him to come to Lahore and become the principal, the dean of Islamia College, Lahore. And while he was in that capacity, he started writing the translation and the commentary of the Quran. So I did not bring my copies, but some of you have seen that my father, back in the 34, started subscribing to this Quran, which was issued one juz, one sipara was issued every 2 months for 1 rupee per copy. And we had a complete set in our home, original. One dear friend, who should remain nameless because many of you know him, he borrowed, when we were in college, he borrowed that first juz and he lost it. So I have now 29, but I don't have the 30th. So he mentions that he visited all the places which are mentioned in the Quran. And he took the manuscript with him wherever he went, whether he was going on vacation, whether he was going to preach the goodness of the British Empire. This manuscript was with him. And he visited all the places which are mentioned in the Quran to put everything in context. Not many translators and commentators have done that. So this was unique. Sheikh Muhammad Ashraf was a very well-known publisher in Lahore, and he undertook the task of publishing the Quran. If you look at this original, it's beautiful the way the Arabic is done by hand. Of course, this precedes the press and how do you say, printing press. I mean, it was done on the printing press, it was handwritten. And the English translation is beautiful, very ornate, but the commentary, as I mentioned earlier, has a very high literary value. And the Quran, later on, I will show you some comments, was admired, leave aside the spiritual message, admired by non-Muslims for the beautiful language that was used to make the commentaries of the book. It underwent 200 different editions. That's monumental. 200 editions. And until the 90s, I believe, that Saudi Arabia republished it, reprinted it, and made changes in the translation and the commentary. Now, I will devote that part for a future lecture because this does not allow me to go. But just I will say one thing is that in any kind of academic work, scientific or otherwise, you cannot, under any circumstance, change what somebody has written. You may write a commentary underneath it that I don't agree with that, You may do that. We do that in scientific terms, when we quote things. But Saudi Arabia in the beginning mentioned, this committee mentioned that they have changed because of whatever. And I think the basis of that was that he did not come up to the level of what the ideal Muslim is in the views of the Saudi Arabia and this committee. The committee, by the way, was chaired by Ismail Farouqi. He was the gentleman who inaugurated this Islamic Center. So I will leave that for a future lecture to show you what has been tempered. So he talks about his project and he says, I collected books, material, visited places, undertook journeys, taken notes, sought the society of men and tried to explore their thoughts and hearts in order to equip myself for the task. He did not just put a copy of the Quran in front of him and a dictionary and started translating. So it was an arduous expedition, if you will, in which. So here are, on your left is the 30th juz, and this is the front of that juz which was issued every 2 months. And on your right is advertisement for the subscription in the back. It got cut off. So Civil and Military Gazette Lahore was a newspaper, defunct since then, was a very well known and respectable newspaper in India. And it says, Mr. Muhammad Ali's version is not couched in a sufficiently elevated style, and Pickthall's is unaccompanied by any commentary. Both these faults he, Mr. Yusuf Ali, has attempted to avoid, and with evident success. The booklet before us is a handsome brochure of 56 pages, beautifully printed. The Arabic text is copied on the production of Festival. And then there was the London Times of London Review and few others, which gave very high marks to this translation. In 1938, he was invited by the National Council of Education in Canada to come for a visit. He was a sought-after speaker, incidentally, in London as well as across the British Commonwealth. So the Muslim community of Alberta, Edmonton, Alberta, invited him to inaugurate the first mosque which they had built. And this is the first mosque which I had the privilege of visiting, about 8 or 9 years ago when I was in Edmonton. This mosque is not at the original place where they used to be. The government of Canada, a national park, if you will, just like a greenfield village, and brought buildings of historic nature, brick by brick, timber by timber. They dismantled and brought it to this site and rebuilt, what do we call it?
Rebuilt.
Rebuilt on that. And so this is the first mosque, not only in Canada, but in North America. The second one was in Iowa, and the third one was, I think, one on the Bancroft Street. So we were just,
Dearborn.
No, sir.
No?
I don't think so.
Dearborn was built
Dearborn was first.
before
Toledo.
Toledo.
Really? So we were
Oh, yeah.
the fourth. Yeah, I stand corrected. So they asked him if he will propose a name for the mosque, and he says Al-Rashid Mosque. Remember, Rashid was his son from his second marriage. even though father and son was totally estranged and remained so until the death of his father. But that mosque is still called Al-Rashid Mosque. Now, this is not a closed mosque. It is still open for worshippers to go in and pray, but there is no regular services there, prayer services. And this is the interior of the mosque, Al-Rashid Mosque. I mentioned earlier that he was disenchanted from the British. And in this disenchantment, he writes a poem on Palestine. What joys and sorrow, laughter, tears are woven in thy web of life. What thrills of mingled hopes and fears. What tragic dreams of love and strife. What statecraft plots have scarred thy brow, O holy land of Palestine. O land of peace, say when and how in these strange days can peace be thine. One way alone can bring thee peace, that ancient rights be not suppressed, that aliens from encroachment cease, and Quds be given its rightful rest. So now World War II is coming to an end, and there's a stirring of independence in India. He lived all those years in Britain. In the beginning, he was had friendships with who's who in England. He knew many people in the House of Lords, but as those people start dying out, he became lonelier and lonelier and lonelier. Somehow the Pakistan embassy found out that Abdullah Yusuf Ali is living in a nursing home and in poor condition. And two things happened. A person from the embassy went and inquired about his health. And second, the ambassador of Pakistan, whose name was M.M. Isfahani, he wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who was a Bengali by name of Muhammad Ali Bogra, and wrote to him that there is a scholar of Islam and he is now living a horrible life, and he asked the Prime Minister to sanction a monthly stipend so at least his life will be a little bit better. As the letter crossed by sea, takes months to get to Karachi, which was the capital at the time, his condition worsens. He lived in the beginning in the Empire Club for pensioners, alone, no visitors, except one. And this visitor came from Cameroon, and he asked the staff that, you have anybody by the name of Abdullah Yusuf Ali? He says, no. Well, he's an elderly man. He says, are you talking about the man who sits all day in the chair and stares in the distance? And he found him there. And they carried on some conversation. But he was not bitter. But he was in that stage of his life where he could not understand why all these things had happened. But he had only one notable visitor other than the staff which were there. So the last days were miserable for him. He was found on the street in bitter cold, snow, on December 9, 1953, confused. He was in the Westminster section of London. He was taken to Westminster Hospital in Chelsea and then transferred to London County Council Institution for the Elderly, and from there, when he did not get better, to St. Stephen Hospital in London, and he died at age 81. He had some money in the bank, but that had already been allocated in his will. But he for all practical purposes, died a poor man, a pauper. And the government, the local government, would have given him a pauper's funeral. But again, Pakistan embassy found out, and they collected some money from among them and then paid for the funeral. His biographer, M.A. Sharif, says that his life began with promise, swung between moments of darkness and summits, and ended in tragedy. And I think in many ways that is very true. So he was laid to rest in the Brooks Woods Cemetery in Surrey, close to the Woking Mosque. And by sheer coincidence, his grave is close to the grave of Marmaduke Pickthall, another translator of the Quran in London. And his grave, this stone, says Abdullah Yusuf Ali. You cannot read it. I had a hard time enlarging it and finding out. Born, date of birth in Surat, died in London. And then also writes his mentions that he had given the commander of the British Empire by the British government. So that is the story of Abdullah Yusuf Ali. If you have any questions.
How much time did he spend in Pakistan, or not much?
India.
India, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this was all 1947. Except for those one or two visits that he went there because of his marriage, and first visit that he studied at Cambridge. He was in India most of the time.
Oh.
Except in the 40s, he left for good and lived in London. Please.
Very superb lecture, very enlightening. Thank you. I have two questions. One is that in the Civil and Military Gazette, it talks about the translations of Mr. Muhammad Ali and then Pickthall. So Mr. Muhammad Ali is Muhammad Ali Jawhar?
I have to look into it. Yeah. Muhammad Ali.
I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, I don't know which Muhammad Ali mentions. Yeah.
Okay. And the second question is that he was born a Bori Shia, but the translation is Sunni. The translation is Sunni. It's not a Shia translation.
Well, glad you asked.
Because I didn't know he was born a Bori.
He was. And as I showed you a slide, from the very beginning, he wanted to have a translation which would be above those sectarian views. He did mentions in the commentary, not translation, a reference to Karbala. He does. I mean, what happened in Karbala, where Imam Hussain and his family was massacred, it doesn't matter whether you're a Shia or a Sunni or whatever, you look at it, that incident itself is a watershed incident. It has changed, in many ways, the course of history. So he mentions that in the commentary, a reference to that. So, but I agree with you that it is a non-sectarian translation.
Well, Mir Shakir Ali is a translator of, classified as a Shia translator. There are codified, there are Quran translations which are classified as Sunni, and there are Quran translations that are classified as Shia. Because there are verses in the Quran, for instance, the incident of the cave in which Hazrat Abu Bakr was with the Prophet ﷺ, and the way that it is translated by Sunni scholars is different from the way that it's translated by Shia scholars, among other things. So that was my question, that I was completely unaware that he was born a Gori Shia because it was promoted, like you said, by Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia just promotes, their philosophy, which is staunchly Sunni. So that was really my question, because it was, to common people, it is known as a Sunni translation.
Well, and that is a credit to him.
Right.
That is a credit to him that he set aside his clan of birth and he rose above those sectarian divides and translated the Quran and commented on the Quran as he thought or he felt and he found out through his travels. So yeah, he was born just like Muhammad Ali Jinnah.
Correct.
Yeah, a Shia. And he created one of the largest Sunni countries in the world.
And here I just want to, excuse me, Jim, just put in a pitch for the Study Quran, which is, the initial author is Sayyid Hussain Nasr. So people say, oh my God, it's a Shia translation, but it has 6 academics from the United States, and it is absolutely amazing that each commentary of each verse is they give you the Sunni version, the Shia version, and the Sufi version.
Mhm.
And it just completely takes away all of these things in your mind and opens it up like scholars really want it opened up.
Yeah, those wrinkles need to be taken out.
They need to be
Yeah.
ironed out.
Just the Reader's Digest version, what did the Saudis do in '90? With
They had a
respect to the
publishing house
translation?
called Amana, and they also reproduced the Quran, Abdullah Yusuf Ali's. But they forgot one thing. They should have said new version, King James Quran.
Good one.
Well, I guess my question though is a little bit, I don't know.
No, you want the substance of what was changed? I will
Yeah.
devote one lecture to that.
Okay, but can you tell me, did they make it, because he was a Shia, did they slant?
No.
Okay.
I cannot tell you
Okay.
because I wasn't there, but there was a committee. Help me, Salah, somebody. What was this research institute the Saudis supported in Virginia that Dr. Faruqi, Ismail Faruqi was part of it? There was a institute.
Ahmed
And-
East?
Sorry?
Was it Ahmed East? No, never mind. I'm thinking of something else. Another publication.
God, it's
Yeah.
it's miserable to be old.
Yeah. Or was it? No.
Yeah, but then I'm very happy everybody else is.
Exactly. All of us old.
So,
Well, I'm gonna look forward to that
yeah,
discussion.
no, it's coming.
Not the age, the discussion.
So what they did was, in the beginning of this reprint, in the preface, they write this thing that they have gone through word by word and to see where the inconsistencies were. To them, it was inconsistency. He has mentioned the Lord, and to them it was not right. So they changed it to Allah, right? But that is the minor. These are superficial, in my view. But then there was substantive text, not necessarily in translation, but in the commentary, that they changed it. They did say in the beginning, in the preface, that this was changed, but they did not give at each instance that this is what was original and this is what we think should be. That's what they did not do. Now, if you really are dying to find out, here is, go on the internet and type my name.
Which is what? What's your name?
Yeah. Type my name and and Abdullah Yusuf Ali
Okay.
and the Friday Times.
Oh, you wrote an article.
So there was 2 essays I wrote.
Okay.
One, the gist I just shared with you, and the second one was how his work was tempered. I give instances of that. Yeah.
Did he ever have any discussion or relationship or anything like that with Pickthall?
I am not aware of that. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yes. No, she raised the hand first. No, she raised the hand first.
What was his religious training? Did he have any formal religious training? And then number 2 is, did he follow a specific school of thought? Or was he trying to kind of transcend that?
Well, he had his original education in the madrasa, which was in Bombay, where Muhammad Ali Jinnah was his classmate, right? Then he went to high school. I think it was a non-sectarian high school. And then he went to Bombay University, from where he got his bachelor's. But his education mostly was at home. He was deeply, a lot of people says that, look at the man has translated the Quran and he did not know Arabic. Those people are saying, look at this man has translated the Quran and he was not an Arab. Think about it. Because we from the subcontinent had always been a notch below the Arabs. We grew up with that. Come on, you're laughing. It's true.
It's your fault.
I know it's my fault. The Quran.
For not being born an Arab, right?
No,
Right.
for thinking that way.
Oh, we've been made to think that.
No, we were.
It was the British
Honestly,
that
this,
did that.
no, I'm
Yes.
making no serious comment. When we were growing up, we were always taught to look westward to Mecca and Medina, and by inclusion, the Arab lands, because those were for us as growing up. If somebody would walk through the street with a headdress, Arab headdress, people will offer sweets and food. Yeah, that was the reverence. And so that got to the head of the Arab mind. And they thought, no, this is a serious subject that we always are considered. Now, I'll give you one more example and then we'll switch on to another subject. In the old mosque,
Oh, boy.
I came to pray and I was late. So I missed 2 rakat as Zohar. And then I finished my prayer. And Hajj Alwain, God bless him, he came to me and says, who taught you that? He thought I was off the street, not knowing anything about religion, because he thought all religion came from the Arab lands. For him, it was not only astonishing, but a little bit of anger and a little bit of, who taught you that? He asked me, how do you answer that?
But you know, for years, people thought that Abdullah Yusuf Ali was an Arab. The Muslims here,
I was not aware of that.
the Muslims here,
Mm.
they didn't know that he was from the subcontinent, that he wasn't an Arab.
Yeah.
That you would go to their homes and everybody had, I don't care, you were in Detroit, you were
Yeah,
here, they had the translation, they had the Quran, and then they had his translation of the Quran. And nobody knew, they didn't talk about it if they did.
Right.
Well, he remained very obscure person in a way. I
Yeah,
told you that the head of Jamaat Islami, Qazi Hussain, I begged him, I wrote to him, I talked to him in person, find some material on him. Apparently they didn't have in their extensive library in Lahore, in the town of Mansoura. Yeah, until that 1994, M.A. Sharif's book came out.
So the version, you said the Saudis modified his version. The version, the book we read today, is that the Saudi version or is that an original?
If it was,
Good question.
Depends on the copy.
if it is published by Amana, Amana, it is tempered.
I have the two, Ahmed, if you want to look at them.
Yeah.
I have the two, yes.
Oh,
I have the original.
I have the original set,
Yes.
minus the copy.
minus one copy. The first, the first was missing.
I think he got very eclipsed by, if Qazi Hussain Ahmad did not know who he was, or.
Oh, I'm sure he knew.
I mean, like, he didn't know too much about him. I think Abdullah Yusuf Ali got eclipsed by Maulana Maududi. Because Maulana Maududi his translation was completely taken over by the Saudis. It was signed, sealed, and delivered, and it has their stamp and everything. So I think that probably is
Yeah.
what happened.
She mentioned Maududi. Maududi was one of the founders of Jamaat Islami in India. Then he moved to Pakistan. He was a scholar in his own right in Islam and had a worldwide following. Unfortunately, that's not the proper word. His view of Islam was more orthodox. More orthodox. In other words, he was still saying why it is important for women to be in seclusion and use the parda, Yeah. So he preached that. Jamaat Islami is one of the most organized politico-religious organization in Pakistan. But his legacy was that he, other than these controversial issues, his Tarjuman al-Quran, the translation, is beautiful to read. Now it's your turn.
Finally,
Finally.
I'm sitting here getting old. In front of my daughter. I wanted to enjoy your lecture immensely, very nicely. I was always interested in Yusuf Ali, just to know about him. I have read about him. The thing which I want to know about, what were his political views? Since he lived with Iqbal and Jinnah and all that, he lived through the independence of India. Which side was he on? British or Indian?
British. If somebody says I give you three choices, his will be British.
But what I'm saying is, being a scholar of Quran, and in the Quran actually even today, class that you were working with, esteemed classmates, giving a country to a Muslim is like a God's gift to those who behave well according to the Quran. Go along with the Quran, do things which the Quran tells you to do. If you do all that, on and on and on, giving you a country is God's gift. This is in Quran. Not even one word for many of us.
Some people may disagree with you because Pakistanis may think it's a gift from God, but I think you need to talk to some Muslims in India.
There is a point.
Let me get the microphone for you because I think it's an important point that Farooq you're making.
So, in Quran, many places it will say that Ibrahim and his descendant, David and Solomon, got magnificent, governments, magnificent countries and, all that, because they went along with the teaching that they were given in the Old Torah at their time, And, once they deviated from that, they lost everything and became, and they scattered all over the world. Consequent to, because they did not go along with what they were taught to do. So, it's obvious that, you are not given anything without working for it. And if Muslims work for it and they got a country like Pakistan, I don't see anything wrong with that, do I?
Nobody says that you're wrong.
No, but here is a scholar that we are aware of.
Yes.
And I enjoy his translation and all that. But then he'll be on the opposite side of the masses in India. Again, set aside the politics. I'm not going into the politics. I'm coming from the Quranic standpoint. Here is a scholar of Quran. No, I'm not saying about Pakistan. even just the independence, why would you support colonization? That's what I'm saying. Or what about Islam?
Yeah, I don't know, but I mentioned this thing, that although he was an ardent supporter of British Empire, he was an Anglophile, in and out. He preached the goodness of the British Empire and the British Indian government. And he had said this thing is that politics and religion should not be mixed. And that's why he was against political Islam. He has said that. Now, your question is, isn't there a contradiction in his mind? I don't know. There are lots of people, Muslims in India, who oppose the creation of Pakistan. Ulama, actually all ulama
Opposed.
all ulama across the board, they oppose Pakistan because they believe that this is God's earth and it doesn't matter where you are, you don't need a new country to be successful. Yeah, but many of them then migrated to Pakistan and took over. They did, yeah.
Including Madhu.
Oh, including Maududi, that's right, yeah. So, any other comments or questions?
You said he had 200 different editions.
Yeah.
Over how long a period was that, do you know?
Well, the first one came out, say, 34 to 36, okay? You will be counting from that point on. Yeah.
I have a question. You said that, and I knew this, that he wasn't a scholar of Arabic.
He was not a scholar of Arabic except that he studied Arabic.
So the methodology was what, in terms of the translation?
I cannot answer that question. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But this one quote which he said,
Right.
let me, if I may, just bring it, because I think that sums up
It
what
does.
he has done. It's an important quote. Let me bring it. I believe in the progressive interpretation of the Quran, in the need for understanding and explaining spiritual matters from different angles. So really, he's not trying to put himself in one cubbyhole, as many other translators have done. And then he mentioned, this is really also a telling quote, I collected books, material, visited places, undertook journeys, taken notes, sought the society of men, and tried to explore their thoughts and hearts in order to equip myself for the task. So he was well read. I'm sure he's went through all the translations and tafsir to come to a conclusion and have his own mind. So it's yes. I was wondering why you were quiet.
So quiet. I was listening. Assalamu alaikum. The bottom line is, it is extremely difficult to translate the Quran because the terminology, the language, the historical background, and the sequence of the ayah, one after the other. And if you do not follow that sequence, you're missing the point. So no matter who is going to translate, it is not a complete and really bona fide translation of the Quran. You can interpret. That's why you shouldn't call it translation. You should call it interpretation. Because, like I mentioned before in one of my lectures, one word could mean many different things. The word ra'a, which means to see, could be taken as what do you think? How about that? Or do you see this? So how is it possible to put all these meanings for one word in any of the translations? So we should not even call it translation. We could call it interpretation according to the level of knowledge of the person who's doing the interpretation. I mean, you have to keep that in mind. That's why you cannot basically pray, or you shouldn't pray in any other language but the Arabic language, in my opinion, because you will be missing something in the meaning of what you're trying to say. Thank you.
Can I do a quick segue into that thing about how the Quran is so much?
We have 2 minutes.
Yeah, just
So, you know,
there's
I'm
30
obsessed-
seconds.
I'm obsessed with finishing on time.
Yes. So Fatma mentioned about the history of the religion and translating the Quran. Maulana Maududi in his Tarjuman al-Quran, and he has a fabulous translation in English with the commentary, is amazing with the history of the whole, with each verse he gives an amazing historical background. It's beautiful in Urdu, of course, because his Urdu is amazing, but in English it's very, very educational. So his history is very good.
So I was talking to Dr. Jabrin, and I said, usually when we have speakers, Abdul Wahab is an exception. They come and they're told that we finish at 1:30, okay? So they finish at 1:35 and they say, "You have any questions?" So I am obsessed with starting on time and finishing on time. So every program has some advertisement, right? So can I have a plug?
You finished up time.
Tomorrow evening, no, I'm still watching the clock, man.
Wrong time.
Tomorrow evening, Monday evening at 5 o'clock, there is a lecture at the medical school in the health science building, room 110. This is an annual lecture, which will be the 12th, I think, lecture this year. And this is on medical humanities. But the speaker's name is Muhammad Fadlallah from Cincinnati. And he has done a lot of missions on behalf of Doctors Without Borders. He was a refugee, more or less, from Sudan. And so at 5 o'clock, if you can come, there's going to be this lecture. So when you come, if you come, you will honor me. Thank you very much. And Abdul Wahab, please.